bring in Attorney Jonathan Thane, he as well as constitutional attorney Thane Rosenbaum and professor, of course. Thane, your take on the rapidity of also, Amir, good to see you there. Sorry I didn't notice you for a second. Thane, your first thoughts on something that happened so fast. Is that good or bad?
Bad for President Trump. You know, you're going to need someone at the jury who's pounding his or her hand on the table and says, but there's no evidence of a crime, right? There's all sorts of things here, but this is not the kind of case that a district attorney could bring today in a criminal court. This is a civil case that depends on proving that a rape took place. But the evidence, the essential elements of what would be required to prove a rape case isn't even here. And the evidence that was being used was only allowed in because the judge allowed it in. Ordinarily, it's the kind of evidence that would not be permitted. It's only because of this exception. This is, you could call it a Me Too believed survivors crime. It's a very special crime. It's not really a crime. It's a window of 1 year that New York State allowed someone to bring a case based on a past sexual assault. But you'd have to have some juror who's banging on the table and saying, if this case would not have made it as a criminal case today, how can we use the same elements in a civil case that would not have worked in, just because the standard of review is different. It's different than presumption beyond a reasonable doubt. In a civil case, it's more likely than not, which is another reason why it's easier here to find the president liable. But again, it's a defamation case that depends on proving rape. And that part is very difficult to have achieved. And I'm not sure they were able to establish that this was a rape.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're actually, we are hearing the judge just said all right at this point.
Okay.
And I'm getting this update from our desk here. He says, Judge Clappin, I've received a note reading in its entirety. Verdict, decorum will be maintained in the courtroom. No shouting, no race for the door. Those are the things that must happen. Let's get the jury. Again, this happening, reports we're getting happening now in real time as we await the verdict announcement in the E. Jean Carroll versus Donald Trump civil case. Again, civil, he will either be liable or not liable for defamation and battery. And again, this is breaking news happening at this moment.
So as we anticipate the moment at which this comes out, your understanding is there's no damages to be awarded. I
don't think they're just saying there could be damages down the line, but at this exact moment, at this exact moment today,
she could take $1. She could take $1 or $1 million.
But I believe that the judge, in giving them instructions, said
write the dollar
amount. Your verdict and write down the dollar amount.
And this is also a case. I'm not an attorney, but my beautiful wife Danielle is. This is a case that could also be won in appeal as well. This is not going to be over today. If Trump loses this, trust me, Joseph Tacopina will be hard at work once again.
And he's already filed certain, registered certain objections that can be appealed down the road.
Exactly right. So it's not over yet today. And again, folks, don't forget, this is a civil case. There'll be some damages awarded. This doesn't mean he can't run for president. He's not going to prison. He'll be in a bad mood for a couple of days.
But in the court of public opinion, he will be labeled a rapist.
I don't think so.
I think in the court of public opinion, because of the media, they're going to come out and say, see, he's guilty. He raped this woman. He's a sexual assaulter.
Amir, I want to get to you here. Again, as we said, civil case, this is a defamation and battery claim. There is no legal rape claim, of course, although to Lydia's point, I think we're going to hear that four-letter word thrown around a lot, whatever the verdict is.
And more than that, let's remember one thing. In New York, there's no statute of limitations on rape by forcible compulsion, which means that if there's a verdict against Donald Trump, it's a civil case, yes. But what do you think Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan DA, who's already shown his willingness to bring a case that's got no teeth, that's not based on any evidence against Donald Trump, is going to say when a jury of Donald Trump's peers, after full due process, returns a verdict saying you're liable for this? Do you think that Alvin Bragg is going to say, look, let's
hang on a second, Amir.
Yeah, hey, Amir, I'm just interrupting again. Most recent update, again, we're getting these in real time. The jury has entered. They walked in front of the plaintiff's table. E. Jean Carroll is seated there. And then back to the jury box. Judge Kaplan said, please pass the envelope to Andy. Thank you. So again, awaiting a verdict at any moment here live.
And what's interesting to me is if you were to say there's liability, it seems like a longer conversation as far as what a dollar number would be, which is makes me wonder if they didn't say, well, there's just not enough there. But as Lydia made clear, there's some testimony at the very least that does not serve the former president well.
She had two friends. She had two friends that, see, this, she can't even give a date. E. Jean Carroll, she can't even give a date of when it happened, but she does have two friends that back then testified under oath saying this happened. So she does have two supposed witnesses that corroborate her story.
When you say this happened, the truth is neither one of her friends heard her use the word rape. Neither one. Neither one. She never said I was raped. So they didn't really convey it that way. And secondly, I would say this. People who are Trump supporters like me, you're not going to convince us this happened 30 years ago in a crowded dressing room, in a crowded department store, regardless of the verdict today, in a city where the judges are liberal and the jury is liberal. You're not going to convince me that President Trump is guilty. So I disagree that people are going to label him a rapist. Yes, the liberal media will. They do it anyway. But people like me, we don't buy any of this.
Of course not. But I mean, her friends, according to the friends.
And again, it's just a reminder, it's not either guilty or not guilty, but it's liable or not liable. Again, this is that civil case. Jonathan, I quickly do want to ask you, because this is that civil case, of course, no jail time here, but what could the potential ramifications be beyond financial for the former president? Right, could they be political? And of course, I think the left-wing media would have a field day throwing, again, that four-letter word rape around, even though this is not a legal rape case.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, the financial ramifications, but then is there going to be political ramifications? And I agree that the people that are diehard Trump supporters, it won't sway them one way or another, but they are the people in the middle, and things like this might have an effect. They might not, because there's just so much noise around the former president right now that a lot of people may, in fact, drown this out. But I do think that is a consideration. It is a political considerations. And back to what you were talking about before about the damages amount as well as the liability, that does seem interesting that the verdict came back this quickly, for them to decide on both this quickly. I think would somewhat surprise me, but again, we're just kind of guessing, because I was a prosecutor for 19 years, and sometimes you get a quick verdict that was in your favor, and sometimes you wouldn't. So it's really
let me
kind
ask
of a
you
guessing
this.
game at this
Let me
point.
ask you this, Jonathan. What are they feeling right now? What does it feel right now? I mean, Joe Tacopina was talking to Sid, said he's nervous going in. What's it feel like to be in that position?
Yeah, I think nervous is the right way. And again, most of my career was as
Hang on a second,
prosecutor.
Jonathan. Hang on a second.
Yeah, I have an update for you here. Judge Kaplan says the clerk will publish the verdict. The clerk says, as to battery, did Ms. Carroll prove that Mr. Trump raped Ms. Carroll? The answer is no. Carroll, answer no. Clerk, abused Ms. Carroll? Yes. Dollar amount, $2 million. Let's see. They're going through, again, actual malice, yes. Injured, yes. Amount, $1 million. Reputation repair program, $1.7 million. So I do want to get a total here. There's also a mention of wanton disregard, yes, $20,000. So there are $3 amounts mentioned here. That ends up being, looks like, $4.72 million, if my math is right. So don't quote me on that. But again, reaction, Thane.
I'm not sure I even understand that, Katrina, right? I mean, think about it. The jury is now awarding damages based on defamation that President Trump told the world that this was a lie, that he never raped this woman. It was all made up. And the jury would have to then conclude that it wasn't made up, that this actually took place and she was sexually assaulted. So the less that the jury was able to come back and say there was a battery that rose to the level of a rape, I don't understand where the damages is, because the allegation was, I never raped her.
Well, they
this
said
never happened.
But Thane, here
So I guess they're then saying, well, it did happen, but what happened wasn't really a rape, it was something else.
She has two. I mean, there are two parts of her claims. There is the battery charge, but then there's also the defamation charge, which happened at two different places. And if you look at this, as to battery, did she prove that he raped her? No. Abuse, yes. And again, Amir, could abuse be characterized along with wanton disregard and defamation in more of the defamation part of the case as opposed to any physical abuse, so to speak?
I'm a little confused as well, and I share Thane's view on this, which is the defamation had to do, as I understood it, with Donald Trump saying that E. Jean Carroll was making this all up when she said that he raped her.
Well, it
So
sounds
the
like,
jury's not
just to cut to the chase, and let's bring Sid back in here. Sid, it sounds like the former president actually did not end up well in this case.
No, I disagree. I think he won. I think he won. He doesn't care about the money.
Well, you can say that if you'd like.
Yeah.
We'll never see a dime.
The news is going to show, and the discussion will be, at this point, $5 million. Tell me how you think that he won. Go ahead.
He won. Joseph Tacopina protected his record. He was up for a rape charge, liability, whatever you want to call it. He was not found liable of rape. He doesn't care about the money. Trump was signed a check today for $5 million, $10 million.
You mean
this trial was all about a rape allegation that didn't happen.
Okay,
There was
He won.
sexual abuse that they found.
They didn't say that. They said abuse, not sexual abuse.
That's what the
no worries
report
at
is
all.
saying.
I'm a block away.
Libel of
Also, I'll
battery.
take this off. I just want to make sure I'm not.
Who's talking? Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Lydia.
So it's libel of battery, which could indicate it indicates sexual abuse, and it's saying here rewarded $2 million in damages,
Total
but the
fine.
jury of 9, including 6 men and 3 women, deliberated for just under 3 hours. So that's pretty incredible. I mean, the fact that they even came up with the monetary damages in such a
Well,
short
that's
amount
what
of time.
surprises me. You were absolutely right, Sid. It was a quick decision. And to me, it's especially quick if you don't sit around and say, well, wait a minute, how much money does Donald Trump have? When you start assigning numbers to that.
Yeah, but I mean, I agree with what Sid said here. And, Jonathan, I want to get your thoughts. I mean, the fact that the answer is, did Ms. Carroll prove that Mr. Trump raped Ms. Carroll? The answer definitively is no. And to me, again, looking at that 4-letter word, actually, I'm going to ask you about this thing, specifically speaking about the fact that there was no proof of rape. The jury said no.
Katrina, I would be in the courtroom tomorrow appealing this. This to me is completely appealable. As you heard, and certainly Amir, I think, as we usually are, in a full agreement. The burden here, it's not just a battery. A battery is illegal touching, but the battery was very clearly specified a sexual assault that constituted a rape. And that's what needed to be proven. The jury needed to be convinced more likely than not, that's the legal standard, not beyond a reasonable doubt, more likely than not that in a crowded, lavish department store in New York City, that a rape took place without any screaming, without anyone seeing it, with no police report, with no rape kit. These people all watch Law and Order. They know what happens with a rape. As Lydia mentioned, you don't even remember the date. You don't even know what month it is. This is not the kind of case you could bring. No prosecutor would ever bring this as a rape case, which is why I always thought the burden here is very high, that the jury would have to walk out of here and say, we believe, even though the evidence was flimsy and would not have been used in a criminal courtroom, we believe she was raped on such and such a date, although we don't know exactly what date it is, because she never told us that date. But if they're coming back and saying this is an unspecified battery, and they're not using the word sexual assault, I don't see where the defamation is.
Agreed.
I don't see how you can find defamation unless you can find rape.
I think.
Agreed. And Tacopina is going to be appealing this thing tomorrow. But again, don't worry about the money, whether it's $4 or $5 million. That means nothing to Trump. He did not want to be labeled a rapist. He is not a rapist. They came back with no. So trust me when I tell you this was a major win for Donald Trump today. They will appeal it. And I guarantee you in the appeal, some of these damages and that abuse charge will go away too. But the main thing was rape, yes or no, came back no. That's a win for President Trump.